A sunny Sunday morning on a coast that's supposed to be famous for fog. But there's not a cloud around to blemish this fine morning in late May. Families in their Sunday best, enjoying the bright sunshine, looking forward to spending the day together. For tomorrow, the boats will leave again. The fishermen will go back to the sea. This is Burgeo, the heart of the southwest coast, and one of our oldest fishing ports. There are records of people fishing out of Burgeo as far back as the early 1700s. Merchants with names like Newman, Clement, and Moulton based fleets of schooners here and exported salt fish to the United States and Europe. Up until a couple of years ago, the sea was Burgeo's only link with the outside. A new road has removed much of that isolation, but the people still owe their first loyalty to the sea. As much as the sea provides a livelihood for the fishermen of Burgeo, it provides a playground for their children. It seems there are more boats than bicycles here, where for so long the sea was the only highway. The quiet, easygoing way of life here makes it hard to believe that Burgeo was the scene of a long and bitter struggle that revolutionized the Newfoundland fishery. It happened 11 years ago and led to the formation of the Newfoundland Fishermen's Union. It all took place here at the Burgeo fish plant. The plant workers decided to unionize, and the company refused to recognize the union. For 14 long months, a bitter strike tore at the heart of this community. But the union finally won, and from its foothold in Burgeo, it spread, until today it represents most of the fishermen and plant workers in the province. Nowadays, the trawler fleet is the backbone of the Burgeo fishery. National Sea, which now owns the plant, operates 6 trawlers from here. From the rich fishing grounds of the Grand Banks and the Gulf, they come steaming up the reach, with catches that last year totaled nearly 40 million pounds. Burgeo's history as a deep sea port, from the old banking schooners to the modern trawlers, tends to overshadow the fact that there are many small boat fishermen here too. Fishermen who go to sea for lobster, salmon, and the inshore groundfish. So tonight on Land and Sea, you'll meet 2 such fishermen. One who talks about the Burgeo fishery of today, and one who'll talk about it as it was years ago. Doug Hann is today's fisherman. In his early 40s, he fishes in a small boat with his brother Jack. On this ice-free coast, they can fish year-round.
We start off around the 7th of January, after Christmas. Fishes right through it until 23rd of December. And you have your Christmas and you go back at it again.
This morning, Doug and Jack are going out to check their salmon nets. The season has just opened, and they're hoping for better luck than they had during the winter, fishing for cod with their longliner.
Pretty slow this year, pretty slow. Well, January, February, we hardly got it at all, and we didn't do the elbow lot not in March and April. And the weather was bad and there was no fish. So the problem, I don't know, a lot of them blame a lot of those small draggers up there off Port of Bass. They don't let the fish come down, but I don't know if it's right or wrong. But I know one thing, that they're destroying a lot of small fish.
So far, the salmon season has been shaping up as poorly as the cod fishery.
It seemed like there last Thursday, Friday, when we put our nets there, some of the boats picked up a few, but then we got this narrow west wind. It's no good on this coast, see? We sooner the wind on the land, the southerly wind, rain, fog. It makes the water thicker, and you want a little lop in the water too, eh? Like just smooth water and too hot, that's no good. Salmon, they're more so just lay up in the nets, they won't miss the same. But bad weather, I suppose, where they're chasing bait and they don't see the same. It's better weather anyhow. Well, like later on in May, now as the Capeland come in, well, the salmon then they'll get inside, going like for the brook, so you use your nets then inside. But last year this time, I think it was in April, I was talking to a fellow the other day, he seen salmon jump up in Grandy's Brook. You don't want to worry about them going in there this year. They're carried in. I think they think the majority of our salmon goes to Nova Scotia. They seem to think they're talking about it anyhow.
Well, both the Nova Scotians and the Brunswickers think that Newfoundland fishermen catch all their salmon?
Well, they destroyed the herring. There's no herring around there. They come down from BC in one place and the other and they destroyed all that. Now you can't get one to eat. So, as far as I'm concerned, the salmon passes up along our shore. If we got our nets off, we should, well, whatever gets in, it should be ours. But I think a lot of it, most of it is saved for the sportsmen.
Well, they brought in some new strict regulations now on salmon fishermen. They're limiting the number of nets and the number.
That's right.
They're not allowing any new people in.
That's right, and I think there's a lot of people with salmon nets and lobster traps for part-time licenses, which is working. It's not a full-time fisherman. I think they're planning on cutting them out. So I think that's what they should do. They should cut it out and give it to the full-time fishermen. The man must depend on his living, winter and summer.
Well, the trip to the salmon nets wasn't too fruitful, only a couple of fish. The salmon fishery in Burgeo was a bad one this year, as it was in many parts of the province. Doug and Jack netted some 1,500 pounds. They usually catch over 2,500. But now it's on to the lobster pots. The Han brothers have pots set all around the many islands that lie just off Burgeo. But like the salmon, the lobsters just aren't there.
Well, they're scarce an inch, Steve. We had 38 traps Saturday. We had 3 lobsters. We got a job getting a meal a piece, like, every week,
Hauling lobster traps is a pleasure when there's something in them. But these days, it's tedious and disappointing work.
I don't know what have happened to the lobster. If one with boys growing up, you put her 10 or 12 pots, you get 7, 8, 9 lobsters every morning. But since they put the restriction on it, that everything disappeared.
What do you mean the restriction?
Well, one time everybody had lobster traps. A schoolboy up to a man, well, if you could get it in boat, well, he'd have a few pots, pastime. But since they put the restriction on it, there's only 3 licenses, I think in Burgeo, or 4 at the most. And there's nobody gets the lobsters.
I think if there were fewer people fishing lobsters, there'd be more lobsters to catch.
You'd think there would, but it's opposite.
A morning's work, checking empty nets, hauling empty traps. Heading for home, with just enough lobster and salmon to pay for your fuel and get a meal for yourself. After days like this, you'd think Doug would wish he were working on one of the Burgeo trawlers, where the catches are good, and so is the pay. But Doug was a trawlerman once, but he gave it up, and he doesn't envy his neighbors who still work on the deep-sea boats.
You're not making so much money as them in the long run, but yet in another way of speaking, that you're better off. Because you're home, you can see your family growing up, but on those draggers, you're only in, I would say, probably make it a month in out of 12. So your family grows up and it goes away, and one of those days you'll say, you can remember them as kids, and then the next thing they're gone from you. So I don't see much point in raising a family, but it's like it all. I guess some fellas likes to be knocking around, some more probably don't,
Like many of the people here, Doug wasn't born in Burgeo itself, but on one of the dozens of small islands just offshore, all resettled in the 60s. Doug came from Hunt's Island, only 10 minutes away by boat, and he often goes back there to visit the old places and recall the old times.
Well, I lived off here for about 16 years. I've been in Burgeo now for 25, 26 years. There's a lot of difference and changes. Just not the same somehow, you know. Well, everybody was fishermen. Everybody was self-employed, like, you know.
Was the fishing good out here? I mean, is there any difference in the fishing when you lived out here as when you lived in there?
Well, I would say yes, but there was more fish to catch then. And there was probably not so many fishermen at it. Apparently, well, Once Island and another place down there, Harbour, about half a mile from Once, it was all fishermen. But there wasn't that many fishermen probably in Burgeo. And now they've got bigger boats, they can go further. But then in them times it was only about 22 to 25 foot boats. Few skiffs just come up from France way in one place and the other, like, you know, fall of the year. And then in the fall of the year, my father and they just go up around the western shore fishing. Sometimes they go across there, they go over around Glace Bay and that sort of fishing in the summertime. So I guess in the long run, it's practically almost any bit the same. Well, you lived out well, practically the land, I suppose, in the ocean. You got your fish, you got your birds. Everybody had their gardens. Everybody was one. Everybody was at one. Whatever somebody had, well, everybody shared alike. But it's not the same in everybody are further apart. And things are not different somehow. Yeah, the old memories come back to you, you know, when you was a boy. You can even get the smell of the whole schoolhouse and you can smell it, like, you know, even though it's gone. It's nothing like the past, I don't think.
There's good times over here, was there?
Oh, the best. It couldn't be beat. Couldn't be beat. Everybody put in a batch of lassie beer every so often. No East cake molasses. There's no trouble to see somebody kicking up their heels. They're probably hitting the leg out of the stove with their little toe or something. Yeah, when I was one of 13, there was 10 boys and 2 girls of us. Because there was 2 died. The oldest one died. He wasn't very old, 2 or 3 months old, or 10 months old. And I had another brother. He got burned. So then I was left oldest then. Then my father died. He was 57. I think he died next year or so after I got married. And my mother still had a family to bring up. But we all survived. Like, you know, anybody born and reared up here, it's in your blood, I guess. There's no place like home. Even though everything is gone, you know. I know there's a lot of old people around today, probably. You know, there's days they must sat back in their chair. And that's where their thoughts have been off here. A lot of them.
Now meet our second Burgeo fisherman, Uncle George Clothier. Thin, nimble, with a swagger in his walk and a beard that even Santa Claus might envy.
I burn right down the bottom of Muddy Hole, what they call Muddy Hole. Well, you see, there's a cove down there and it's all mud. And this is the reason they call it Muddy Hole, see?
George is 74, and most of those years he spent at sea, fishing with his father in a dory, then going to the Grand Banks aboard a Burgeo schooner. George doesn't do too much fishing anymore. He does have 1 salmon net in the water, but that's more of a pastime. Like most people, George worries about the troubles in the fishery, but he also feels fishermen today have it pretty good compared to the old days.
I went fishing when I was 8 years old, see? Rowing in dories. But he was only getting creek barb a cent a pound. 75 cents for 100 pound of fish. And you had to split it. Well, you wouldn't want to make no money like that.
George's wife died some years ago, and his 3 sons have grown up. So George spends most of his time alone. His 2 oldest sons, Louis and Gilbert, are fishermen. And on this beautiful May morning, George is going to pay them a visit. But to go visiting, George has to hitch a ride on a longliner. On this coast, going for a visit isn't simply a matter of climbing into your car and off you go. George has to depend on friends. friends like Doug Hand, who owns this longliner. Doug and George once fished together for a summer, and they're still good friends. Once spring comes and the lobster and salmon seasons open, his two sons leave Burgeo and move 10 miles up the coast to an isolated place called Wreck Island Cove. So George comes aboard and we're on our way. Wreck Island Cove is just a few small cabins built around a small, rocky harbor. But on this lonely, deserted shore, they're a welcome sight. Doug brings the Cathy Marie into the cove while Jack takes care of the anchor. It's rocky and barren, and there's not a tree in sight. But Wreck Island Cove has the quiet and the ease of those spots where you hardly bother to check your watch or look at a calendar. When we arrive at Lewis and Gilbert's cabin, it's time for a mug-up, while George catches up on the news from his two sons. The fishing hasn't been very good. The lobster and salmon are scarce here too. After the mug-up, it's time for George to tell a few stories about his days as a dory fisherman on the Grand Bank schooners.
When we was sailing and up here on the western shore, they drop your dories from the side of her, eh? And you have your moorings and everything in the dory.
You were going up pretty fast, weren't you?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I heard you talk about that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you go back and you bend on a piece of rope, eh? There's a piece of rope back there with some oils into it, eh? And you reeve your painter down and sit on the middle tot and hold on the painter like that.
And boy.
And when he sing out, let go, when the fella sing out, let go your painter. And all aboard, then.
Yeah, so then you drift off and go fishing.
And
That's
then the
right.
other fella, ABK. And then you sit your gear out.
How old were you when you went out? How old were you when
I
you
was
went out?
14 years old when I went with Joe Warren. The first trip I had was down the Gulf. I was 14 years old.
Yeah, you were in a big gale in August, were you?
Yeah.
It's that
That's
August
the
gale.
August gale we struck coming up. Yeah, but it caught my August. See? We lost our two dories and beat up our booby edge. That's a scuttle place. Go down low. And where you go down forward, beat that off. The chain box went over, hit that off. We had about 30 cans of fish on deck. We canvas over. We took that canvas off and put on and put around the scuttle Faraday to keep the water from going down. And we bit on deck from 6 o'clock that night till 6 o'clock that morning. Old Uncle Rube Masons and Peter Nell. From Uncle Rube Mason belonged to Rim County, and Peter Nell belonged to Western Cutasaca.
You were 14 years old.
And I was 14 years old.
And they were grown men, were they?
And they was the oldest
Yeah.
men was aboard.
Yeah. What about the other men who were on board? Where were they?
The
Huh?
skipper never even come on deck, he said.
No, the skipper never come on deck.
Everybody else stayed below, did they?
Yeah.
All below.
Except for yourself.
But they give,
Three of us.
didn't they give
Three
up
of us
schooner
on
on
deck.
that?
Eh?
They give up? Like,
They give up.
Yeah,
They
they give up.
They
Yeah.
give her right up. They're going to be last.
You would go aloft when grown men wouldn't, would you? And you were 14 years old.
That's right. That's right.
You had no fear of going up in storms?
No, I didn't care, see?
No.
I didn't care. But he kept on. Look, one time, the poor old man all lay down with me 2 legs.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Well, you
Went
going
up
up?
for a block. What he takes up the anchor wood.
Yeah.
He had to grab you and haul you down out of it.
He took
Yeah.
a little line and hauled me down. I was about 3 pairs drunk. I didn't care.
But if I give you nerves, if I...
Yeah, I didn't care, see?
All too quickly, the visit to Wreck Island Cove has ended, and we're back in Burgeo as the day draws to a close. But Uncle George Clothier's stories don't end when the sun goes down. He's still got plenty left as we sit around the kitchen table of his Burgeo home. Like the time during the Second World War, when he was working on a schooner off the west coast and encountered a German submarine. You had a run-in with a German submarine when you were serving on that coastal boat.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. We seen her down the other side well, this side of Red Rocks, they call it, Codroy. They're between Codroy and Red Rocks. There's planes come off. And
What time of day did you see the submarine?
Oh, about an hour before the sun went down.
How'd you know what it was?
Oh, we had to see her because when she come out of water, see, it was right rusty. Yeah. You wouldn't know where from, see.
Mm-hmm.
We seen it.
And
the planes come off.
what planes were they?
Well, near to Queerplay. I can't mind the name of the place.
From Stephenville.
Stephenville.
Yeah.
Come off and drop discharges.
Is that right? They dropped depth charges on the submarine. These were American planes, were they?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, American plane.
I understood they dropped some depth charges pretty close to your boat, did they?
Not very far from us. Not very far from us. Well, there was one part of a stern, eh? And when that plane come off, I said he was going to take the main, so I swore because I seen her coming. See, when he got right over, down fall on deck. Yeah, he was that handy, the plane. And she started dropping them then.
Yeah. Now, that was the same submarine that...
That was the same one. When we got into Carnabrook, not that night, but the next night, we was taking out coal, we heard people gone.
What's that?
The Caribou, out of Port of Bass.
The Gulf Fury.
Yeah.
So you figure that was the same sub that...
Same one, sir, that was the same one.
That was the same sub that sank the Caribou.
That was the same one, yeah.
And how'd you feel when you found out that she'd sunk the...
Well, we thought of bad about it, see. But there was a lot got drowned, and there was a lot got saved.
George, back in the old days when you were growing up in Burgeo, they had a strange way of keeping the floors clean in the houses, did they?
Oh yes, just the way they had to keep it clean was sand. Sand on the floor. He said sand is dirty, but clean sand, eh? Sand is clean.
So they spread sand over the floors?
Spread it all over the floor, and then they slow around after the middle of the week. They take the broom and they sweep that all up, and then they scrub it up, and they put it on again.
What would they scrub it up with?
With caulk, piece
Cork.
of caulk. Yeah, and the floor would be just so wet that you would just plane down a piece of board.
And I suppose when you're sitting down at the table eating something, you didn't want to drop it on the floor, did you?
Oh no, sir, you got to get all sand. They're bound to get all sand. I know when we were small boys, eh? Go in and get a piece of bread, go around and drop it on the floor. You couldn't eat it. With molasses on it, eh? I drink molasses, they all drink molasses.
So you put a bit of molasses on a piece of bread, and
Yeah.
what would happen? You drop it on the floor or something?
Go molasses down, every time. Yeah.
And you'd throw it away then, would
We
you?
had to leave it away then. Yeah. The dog wouldn't eat it. Full of sand. But that was their belief, see? That's the old people. That was their belief.
You've had a good long life so far.
Oh yes, yes sir. I lived pretty good, yeah. Good life. Yeah, you drink a lot though. Oh yeah.
You were saying that you think maybe you've lived a bit too long, have you?
Well, I've lived long enough, I suppose. I've lived so long as I'm supposed to, see? 3 scores and 10, eh? I'll be 74, my birthday. Well, you're only supposed to live 60. You see? 3 scores.
It's 3 score and 10, 70.
70, yeah. Well, I've lived...
You're 4 years beyond that.
4 years too long. You see, that's somebody else's time. But I suppose I got to put up with it.